So a few years ago, when I was an undergraduate student at McGill University, I had a conversation with this student. He was, I think he's a Canadian of European descent. He was a visiting student from the University of Alberta, and he was spending a semester at McGill University. He was planning to go to medical school. And somehow we ended up talking about development in the West and development in Africa. And I told him, from what I had observed by then, I think it was 2004, I think. And I told him, there's nothing really special in the West that they are doing, something that led to industrial development and economic development and political development that Africans cannot do. There's nothing really. He was sort of surprised, didn't quite understand what I was saying. But I still believe that. So it's sort of the culture they've established. And if something new starts in the West, something they're not used to, they'll mess up like anyone else. Look at how they handle the COVID-19 pandemic. It was something new. There was no institutional precedents they could learn from, so they messed it up. Many people died in the West because they didn't know what they were doing. It was something new. There was no blueprint they could use. So the decisions that were made in Canada and in the US, they were really terrible decisions because there was no history from which they could learn. Now, what I want to do in this video is to show you something the Prime Minister of Canada, who is now outgoing, said when he was resigning. And just to show you how political leaders make decisions in Canada and in the West. And I'll also show you the response by the opposition leader and what he says about Canada and the would-be former Prime Minister now.
Every morning I've woken up as Prime Minister. I've been inspired by the resilience, the generosity, and the determination of Canadians. It is the driving force of every single day I have the privilege of serving in this office. That is why, since 2015, I've fought for this country, for you, to strengthen and grow the middle class. Why we rallied to support each other through the pandemic, to advance reconciliation, to defend free trade on this continent, to stand strong with Ukraine and our democracy, and to fight climate change and get our economy ready for the future. We are at a critical moment in the world.
What he did was to lay out his achievements, what he's achieved, and what his plan was. That's the first thing he did.
Every bone in my body has always told me to fight because I care deeply about Canadians, I care deeply about this country, and I will always be motivated by what is in the best interest of Canadians. And the fact is, despite best efforts to work through it, Parliament has been paralyzed for months after what has been the longest session of a minority parliament in Canadian history. That's why this morning I advised the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament.
After he said his achievements and his plans, he said how he feels towards Canada.
She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
See, what he just did, he knows that he had something to achieve and he was still not done with achieving that. But he realized that as Prime Minister of Canada, he would be an obstacle if he continues to stay on, because the problem wasn't just other Canadians. The problem wasn't just the opposition leaders, one of whom I'll show you now his response to that. It wasn't just the opposition, it was also the people within his own party. So he's saying if he had to continue to fight within his own party about his political life, then he has become an obstacle. And he realized it was time to go. But remember, in Canada we don't have term limits. And also, you also heard from what he was saying, he's not done. He had a lot. He has a lot to achieve. He's still younger in terms of political leaders in the world. But he realized he was becoming an obstacle and he has to go. So that's what leaders do. I'm not saying South Sudanese leaders are supposed to do exactly that, but that is something from which they can learn. Now, I voted for him the first time he became Prime Minister in 2015, but in subsequent elections, I didn't vote for him because I realized he wasn't the leader he said he was, in terms of gender equality, in terms of the environment, in terms of saying what he plans to do. He became a different leader, so I didn't vote for him. And Poliev, whose video I'll play shortly, in his response to the Prime Minister, is not someone I would actually vote for him because he's very radical. He's far to the right. He's almost like the Canadian Donald Trump. But look at how he responded to the Prime Minister. He's going to paint a picture of Canada almost as if it's a crumbling country. But the way he paints it is what counters the leadership in power, where the Prime Minister and his party and his own value system and his plan. And then there's also the opposition that brings in a different viewpoint. And it's not a kind viewpoint.
Canadians desperate to turn the page on this dark chapter in our history might be relieved today that Justin Trudeau is finally leaving.
What he calls the dark chapter is the leadership of the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. All the years he's been Prime Minister since 2015 is what he's calling the dark chapter. Because some Canadians would say, no, not really. Especially liberals would say, no, it was an amazing era.
But what has really changed? Every Liberal MP in power today and every potential Liberal leadership contender fighting for the top job helped Justin Trudeau break the country over the last 9 years. All Liberal politicians actively worked to pass into law the job-killing inflationary carbon tax, a tax that Carbon Tax Carney endorsed in his book. All supported a law quadrupling the tax over the next 5 years. All voted for or actively supported Trudeau's out-of-control spending, debt, and immigration. All passed Trudeau's housing policies that doubled the cost of homes. All Liberal politicians helped pass catch-and-release bail and house arrest for the most rampant reoffenders, policies that increased violent crime 50%, gun crime 116%, and hate crime by 250%. So given that Liberal MPs and leadership contenders unanimously supported everything Trudeau has done, why dump him now, right before an election? Have they had a change of heart? Is it because they feel guilty that they doubled housing costs, hiked taxes, unleashed crime, broke immigration, forced a quarter of the population into poverty? No. They continued supporting Trudeau when he did all of those things. No, their only objection is that he is no longer popular enough to win an election and keep them in power. They want to protect their pensions and paycheck by sweeping their hated leader under the rug months before an election to trick you and then do it all over again.
Now, see how he responded. So he listed economic issues. He listed social issues that he believes became exacerbated by the leadership of Prime Minister Trudeau. Now, for someone who is on the left, someone who is liberal or from the National Democratic Party, which is another party in Canada, because the liberals are somehow centrist, they're in the middle, the conservatives are on the right, and then the National Democratic Party is on the left. It's almost far left. So one of the things they do is to focus on these issues to sort of paint the leadership of the prime minister or the incumbent leadership as having destroyed the country. But what it does is just it puts the other political party on its toes to sort of say, that's not what we are doing. These are our achievements. Now, this system is something that we don't expect to be in South Sudan today. But it tells you when the other person itemizes your problems, then you can also itemize your own achievement and say, this is what we've achieved. But in South Sudan, if you itemize the problems, that the other party can say, okay, I will fix them this way, they want to kill you. They think of you as the enemy of the state and they want to kill you. So it's difficult to change systems from the SPLA that was used to militarized modus operandi, the way of doing things, to becoming a conventional political party where someone who's your junior, someone who's younger can call you out, can criticize you, and you say, look, let us sit down and talk about what are you saying? What do you think I've done wrong? And then you tell them, okay, you're mistaken. This is my agenda. This is what I've achieved. This is what we've achieved as the party. You are wrong. But in South Sudan, it's all or nothing. You criticize me, I want to kill you. And you've seen recently the threat by the National Communication Authority, led by Napoleon Adok, who threatened to shut down the social media. Why? Because the people themselves were raising, grievances against the South Sudanese government and also against the Sudanese government because South Sudanese citizens were massacred in Sudan. And instead of sitting with the people and saying, okay, this is how we're addressing your grievances, they went to the all or nothing approach, shut down the social media. Luckily, the people who stood up for the rights on the social media, the South Sudanese Bar Association came out and said, no, this is a violation of the rights. And some people were saying, we don't understand this. South Sudanese are saying, we are complaining because our people were killed in Sudan. So how are we the problem? How do you shut down the social media when we are the people who are offended? But I think the problem was people who had grievances and they were afraid of the whole event. The grievances by South Sudanese sort of morphing into some sort of something that looks like or something that resembles the Arab Spring that can potentially oust the president. That's why they were afraid. But they retracted and they said they'll remove the order. In 3 days they will tell the providers to lift the order. So my issue is with the SPLM. It's okay to be criticized because that's how you fix what is wrong. And you say, okay, this is what they say is our mistake. We are not paying salaries, so let us pay salaries and see what they will say next. Let us build roads and let's see what they will say next. Let us build hospitals. It doesn't end. And that's how opposition leaders keep the incumbents on their toes. So Poilievre is going to say these things all the time. Some of them are wrong. Some of them are just, for example, saying the leadership of the prime minister, and I don't agree with the leadership of the prime minister. He's done terrible mistakes. But to say that it was a dark chapter in the Canadian history, it's hyperbole. It's just an exaggeration. But it's good for Canada. It's good for the progress of Canada. It's good for leaders who become dictatorial. And Trudeau, almost on the verge of becoming dictatorial. The oppositions are good for that. So SPLA needs voices like us, opposition voices, people like us who are independent, critics, and also opposition leaders